From the world stage to Shakespeare stage, I compare today's international politics with some of his greatest dramas, tragedies, and characters. The recent 2008 U.S. presidential election signaled a return of intellectualism in global politics, with an unapologetic comfort with ideas and complexity. Yet, in this high-speed, mobile tweeting century, world events can seem like a blog of internet entries and caricatures of the media. Perhaps the world's most famous bard can help us appreciate a world filled with uncertainty and contradictions. Let's take a look at Shakespeare in a way we probably never thought of during high school, and see for ourselves. North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il first surprised the world when he launched ballistic missiles and supposedly tested a nuclear bomb underground. But in the play Macbeth, we soon learn fair is foul and foul is fair. The Macbeths carry out a calculated plot to kill the king and take control of the throne. Here, I compare Kim Jong-il's own sense of daringness from his plot, but in today's modern parallel, the coveted crown is international aid and solvency from debt. The missile launches from Lady Macbeth's famous washing of her hands. Out, damn nukes, out, I say! In the painting, the three witches that poison Macbeth's mind hail from East Asia. Trade restrictions from South Korea, control of food and fuel supplies from China, and pre-war atrocities from Japan all had some contribution to the prediction of the North Korean weapon proliferation. We learn that when a dictator's mind is poisoned with greed, he can fulfill a prophecy of committing treacherous acts. From North Korea to Southeast Asia, parting is such sweet sorrow that it shall be felt till it is 6 decades later. Here, I compare India and Pakistan to Romeo and Juliet, two lovers bound by passion, romance, and ultimately, their untimely death because of an ongoing war between their two households, the Montagues and the Capulets. India and Pakistan share a common history, culture, language, and religion. Yet since the partition over 60 years ago, the diplomatic relations have been strained by numerous conflicts and territorial disputes. In the painting, the two lovers are surrounded by the warring families, in the form of forefathers and recent Indian and Pakistani leaders. Mahatma Gandhi, Pandit Nehru, Muhammad Jinnah, modern Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and recent Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf are all alike in dignity. Also in the painting is the contrast of two trains, 60 years apart in their respective departures from New Delhi to Lahore, which have been targeted by militants. We learn that the lust of religious and secular fervor, unruly passion, and the realization of love can turn to violence. Next, we travel to Latin America to beware the Ides of March. This painting parallels the ambitions of Julius Caesar to the ambitions of Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. Like Julius Caesar, Hugo Chavez is a political visionary who is both feared and supported. In 1999, President Chavez led a national referendum to draw up a new constitution, intended to change outdated property laws. But the clauses also allowed for unspecified number of re-elections, which would have allowed him to stay in office until 2032. Like the Republic of Rome, the Venezuelans were cautious of the president's unlimited terms, and in 2007, they ended their ruler's ambition when they voted down the constitutional reform. For this work, I painted imagery from the nightmare of Calpurnia, Caesar's wife in the play, who warns the ruler not to go to the Senate on the Ides of March. Warriors fighting on a cloud, a lion on the Capitol, civil unrest, and the downfall of a giant Caesar statue are all part of her premonition. Artistic adaptations include oil workers bolstering the platform of the main figure, who has the face of Hugo Chavez and the toga of a Venezuelan national flag. Once again, we learn that the pride and overvaulting ambition of a political visionary can lead to his downfall. The next painting provokes a comparison of the Israel and Palestine conflict with the play Othello. Othello was a Moorish soldier who weds the fair Desdemona of Venice. Like Othello, Palestinian refugees are visibly isolated by their skin color and are minorities in a foreign culture. Also like Othello, Palestinians have been perceived to have his honor and loyalty, as well as his wrath. Intifada means uprising, and the Palestinian extremist attacks on Israel are similar to the desperate, violent rage of Othello, who smothered his wife Desdemona. But given Israel's economic and military strength, and without a state for Palestinians to call their own, which land is truly smothered? Here, I painted Desdemona burning in the contour of the Israel state. Othello's hands represent the Palestinian settlements of the West Bank and Gaza. Israel's territorial borders have been disputed by the United Nations since the 1967 Six-Day War, and in the painting, the cloud of 67 quite literally hovers over the eastern half of Jerusalem. Desdemona's father was once taunted by his daughter's marriage to Othello with the phrase, "An old black ram is dumping your white ewe." This metaphor of bestial power struggle is found in a scene where Israel's soldiers arrest a Palestinian man at a security checkpoint. We learn from the play Othello that mistrust of an isolated people will fester over time, and deep-rooted rage will eventually erupt into violence. As part 2 of the Othello play, I compare Iranian President Mohammad Ahmadinejad to Iago, one of Shakespeare's most complex villains. President Ahmadinejad has provoked UN inspectors to investigate Iran's enrichment of uranium. He has called for the destruction of Israel and defended a nuclear program. In many respects, he maneuvers like Iago because of his persuasive rhetoric that masks his underlying intention. I painted this work to be a contrast of the restrictions and excess imposed by the Iranian government, similar to Iago's control in the play. Iago falsely gives Othello ocular proof that Desdemona is having an affair by stealing her handkerchief, which I painted with the Iranian flag and nationalists celebrating the use of atomic energy. In his other hand, President Ahmadinejad pours alcohol from a wine bottle, like Iago did when he got rival officer drunk so that he can take his position. With a little web, I ensnare as great a fly. We have learned from Shakespeare that a man of cunning coldness and selfishness can use double-meaning rhetoric to maneuver his own political gains. From Iran to Russia, we look at another international dynamic figure. In March 2008, Vladimir Putin ended his final term as Russia's president, and by nominating his successor and protege, Dmitry Medvedev, he assured his role as the prime minister. Putin faces the same succession planning worries that plagued King Lear. In the play, King Lear decides to abdicate his throne and divide the kingdom of Dover among his 3 daughters. Cordelia refuses to outdo the false flattery of her elders. She feels it would only cheapen her true love for her father. The king banishes Cordelia from the kingdom and eventually orders her murder. Shakespeare wrote, "How sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child." From ancient Dover to modern Moscow, Vladimir Putin led a national revival from the wealth of oil, gas, and timber. However, to achieve political stability, his administration curtailed personal freedoms. They shut down TV stations and newspapers, jailed businessmen that challenged the Kremlin's hold on power, arrested the opposition, and for a spy who may have leaked some of these secrets, ordered a murder. The spy, by the name of Alexander Litvinenko, was given orders to assassinate Russia's first billionaire. When he refused, he was imprisoned, and after his acquittal, sought asylum in the UK, where he was poisoned. Like Lear, Putin is every inch a king, and was also a former FSB Secret Service director, and felt the serpent's tooth of a spy's refusal. I painted Vladimir Putin holding the poisoned spy Alexander Litvinenko the way King Lear carried his dead daughter Cordelia, to parallel the sincere protests of a loyalist. We learn that as the rule of a loved and obstinate king wanes, he can become gluttonous over his kingdom's legacy. This painting interprets the Bush administration's occupation of Iraq using the plot and characters of Hamlet, which certainly revealed something's rotten in the state of Baghdad. Hamlet is the ultimate revenge tragedy, in which the Prince of Denmark avenges his uncle for killing his father. Under the pretense of weapons of mass destruction, the Bush-led invasion to topple the regime of Saddam Hussein is a revenge tragedy in its own respect. From the administration of Bush Sr. to George W., U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney influenced the Commander-in-Chief to avenge the terrorism of 9/11, much like the ghost influenced Hamlet to avenge his father's murder. In the background of the painting, Cheney appears from the smoke of a suicide bomb truck. Also in the background, the lady doth protest too much. Like Hamlet's mother, Condoleezza Rice misaligned too quickly. The conviction and hanging of Saddam Hussein was much like Hamlet's mousetrap. It served as the Bush administration's proof that the revenge was justified. Both figuratively as well as in the painting, the poisoning of the ear of George W. Bush parallels the mousetrap's interpretation of evidence. Also, a tortured Abu Ghraib detainee parallels an insane Ophelia before she drowns in the pond of oil. The painting's central figure depicts Hamlet as an agent of the American Armed Forces, who avenges the United States amidst all this treachery, violation, and moral corruption. In the soldier's dog tag is inscribed the full soliloquy of to be or not to be, in Iraq perhaps. 400 years after the play's original debut, Hamlet reminds us that revenge is filled with inactivity, in both premeditation and after-the-fact hesitations, and leads to tragedy.